So there are participants joining. Should we give it another 1-2 minutes?
It's about 5 now. Yeah, maybe a minute or so.
Yeah, sure. Perfect. So I think we'll give it a slow start, and people should join as we progress. Yes. So good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for taking the time, especially on a Saturday, for joining us for the 4th edition of PGPMAX Industry Dialogue. The Industry Dialogue is a thought leadership series driven by the PGPMAX community, moderated by a current student and featuring our alumni from across industries. The platform discusses topics of relevance and brings insights from our alumni to you. In the 4th edition of PGPMAX Industry Dialogue, we discuss the CXO mindset, the then, the why, the how. Join our panelists from senior leadership across industries as they discuss how to acquire a CXO mindset. I take this opportunity to invite the moderator for today's event. The Industry Dialogue today will be hosted by Ganesh Mani S of PGPMAX class of 22. Ganesh is part of the current cohort and is the President and Chief Operating Officer of Ashok Leyland. Prior to starting his new role with Ashok Leyland about a month back, he was a member of Board of Directors at Hyundai India. Ganesh has over 3 decades of experience leading operations for auto majors in the country. And we could not have asked for a better person to host the event than him. As CXO himself, Ganesh will today host our alumni from across industries as we explore the topic of building a CXO mindset. Thank you for accepting the invite to be the host today, Ganesh, and welcome to the PGPMAX Industry Dialogue. That said, handing over the stage to you now.
Okay, thanks, Thomas. Good evening, everybody. It's indeed a great pleasure and a privilege to kind of host this session in front of all of you. And as the people keep joining here, and we are going to have a whole lot of discussions today in the next 90 minutes. We have 3 important, prominent alumni of ISB and also industrial stalwarts. I think over 70 years of experience is right now sitting in this room. These 3 panelists. First 2 are actually 2 Rajivs, Rajiv Nair and Rajiv Bajaj. And also we are joined by Ekta Ghosh, 3 important people. And Rajiv Nair and Rajiv Bajaj are the first, they are founder members of ISB cohort in 2011. And also Ekta Ghosh will talk about as recent as 2018 and onwards, what is that? Such a lovely, group of people we are going to discuss. So what we are going to, do it today, we are going to keep it in 3 or 4 layers. And, as much as possible, we try to learn from them. And as like all of you, I'm also excited to be a part of this. And I'm also going to have a whole lot of learning in this process. I'm sure each one of you is going to get maximum benefit out of these courses. Today's topic is pretty important. The most important thing is about the CXO mindset. The most important thing is when, why, and how. Before even that, I would like to start this question to all the panel members as to, what is the difference between a CXO and all the other the differences also. I think that is one thing I request them to think it over. The first and foremost is, I like to introduce our first panelist. I would like to call Rajiv Nair, who is a group CEO of ISB Limited. Three members are from a three different industry. That is also making our conversation extremely, interesting today. He's a retail king, I would call it as. Got so many years of experience in Shopper Stop, and then now into a new company, new role of medical and retail business. And there are one more important thing is that he's also a postgraduate management student earlier, and again went on to do a ISB. So a whole lot of people who joined today would have a doubt, or why do we do ISB PGPMAX, as to why should we do it even after having done MBA. So I think that's one thing I like to talk about it. I think probably you can also talk during your discussion, Rajiv. Our second panelist is Ekta Ghosh. She is a PGPMAX 2018 batch. She's a Chief Digital Officer of WAISIL Limited. She will talk about a little bit more about her company and what she's doing during the conversation period. But she is actually an IT specialist and also IT business specialist. So we have a complete retail and also an IT business specialist. That's a second panelist today. She has got more than 25 years of IT experience. I think, it doesn't seem that way when we see her. And also she is into a travel and aviation, currently IT business. I think she's going to talk about her experience here. And the third and most important stalwart of today is Rajiv Bajaj, with a lovely beard of white and making mesmerizing look. He is 2011 pass out of PGPMAX, and he is a thorough gentleman, and he's a close friend of me also. We have already come across in various occasions. He's actually into a consulting, more specifically to the consulting of manufacturing organization, both organically and horizontal, as well as into the complete M&A. I think it's a completely three different panelists today. And I'm 100% sure, like me, each one of you also will be inquisitive enough to, and look forward to these activities. So without question, of course, you already raised your hand, buddy. I will come back to you, Satan. I really appreciate, before even I start saying that, this is going to be really highly interactive. I've got a couple of set of questions, and I would like to go ahead with many of the members who have joined here, and as much as possible, we'll make it as interactive possible, and we'll go till 6:30 p.m. So to begin with, Rajiv Nair, I like to ask you a question on this era of the period of VUCA world, whatsoever it is. Quite often, the people progress well within the functional role and assume a functional leadership role in their own area of expertise. But the leap from this to their area to the organizational role, one takes a holistic organizational perspective that is always cited to be a challenge. And that's what more specifically to a CXO role comes into picture. So how any aspirational leaders should actually address into. And I would request you to, frame your answers probably in these areas as to why this role plays an important role, and also as to when, and then, how, and, in those areas, in case if we can answer these questions, I would really be happy. And in the same way, we'll request all the others also to respond to there and then move on to, unfold the entire story. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mani. And thank you, everybody, for, of course, all of us being here. I think is a wonderful opportunity for us to interact together. Rajiv is part of my class, but meeting cohorts of ISB PGPMAX is always a pleasure. I am assuming the group right now, the listeners are partly students of ISB PGPMAX current cohort, as well as alumni, as well as people who are aspiring to be in the PGPMAX program. So I'm going to phrase my answers in such a way that it kind of works for all audiences rather than for alumni of PGPMAX or current cohorts of PGPMAX. Let me make an effort by saying that I don't think, the CXO mindset is like an instant change or an instant button that you press and suddenly you become a CXO mindset, or for that matter, go on to become the CEO or the head of the company. I think we are all work in progress all our lives, right? So I think it's a process of continuous change for each one of us, and a process of continuous growth and adaptability for each one of us through our careers. some of us sitting here have spent more than 25 years in career. So that growth journey started maybe way before we even started working, right? So we were like all aspects of our life, right? From childhood to adulthood to career progression, right? So that's how it actually happens. But I feel all of us probably started our careers with the intention to be a functional expert. All of us probably had a particular area of expertise and kind of pushed ourselves in that sphere of expertise. Just to give you my example, I actually I was not even born in the era where retail existed in India. I am an 80s student or a 90s student. And if I look back, there was no retail whatsoever in the country in the late 80s or early 90s. We were probably the first company, that is Shopper Limited is the first company which took freshers straight out of college to be part of the journey of being a retailer, because we couldn't get management students from management in good B schools to join these companies. So that's how the journey actually started. And we were actually molded to become retailers and the retailers of the future for the organization. So I would say the first 10, 15 years of our career, at least my career, was in a functional area of expertise. So which was basically, in my case, it was buying and planning for a retail departmental store. So that actually, kind of put the fundamentals for me as far as my early journey is concerned. But through my career, and I would say maybe that is, I'm trying to seek an answer and probably trying to tell you an answer, saying the fact that while you're doing a particular functional area of expertise, somewhere down the line, if you ever want to be a CXO or a CEO, I think what's crucial is you should always be looking for change and adaptability within your role. You should always be looking at change within what you're actually doing and build fundamentals for yourself. Because sometimes the concept of change could mean change of a job. In my case, for example, the first job that I took up, I was in that organization for almost 18 years. But within that 18 years, if I were to split it into smaller parts or components, there were various functions that I actually did as part of the business. So in any business, there are some core parts of the business or core parts of the operation. For example, in the case of a retail business, it's trading. So it's buying and selling. So I started my career with planning and buying because I had an accounting type of background. So I actually went in to procure goods and procurement side of business. But after some time, I actually decided that if I continue to be very comfortable with this sphere that I understand, I probably will miss out on the larger consumer insight side of the business and meeting the consumer and interacting with the consumer and doing what retailers really do. So at some stage in my career, I actually chose to get out of what I was comfortable with and went into what is the selling side of the business. So I actually took up core operations for the business. So I actually ran stores for the business for a period of time. So that was the second part of it. Then I actually came back into the business, into the head office role to lead businesses both on the buying and the selling side. So for example, became what we call as the business head for certain parts of that particular business. Even after that, after having spent some years there, I actually thought I was still uncomfortable. I said, I need to learn more. So I actually said the fact that this is a large business of Shopper Limited. Let me take up a small new brand and do a startup within a larger organization. So I actually set up a brand called Mother Care way back in 2006, 2008, which actually scaled up and even today exists as part of the Reliance Retail group of companies. It was a UK-based company, but I said I'll be the first member of that company within my larger company or larger organization. So I set up a team from scratch. We created a 200-man team and set up about 60 stores of this particular brand way back in 2006, 2008. Retail is very dynamic. It's changing, and this phase of retail was changing from only specialty retail to more big box hypermarket format. So I actually moved from my comfort zone again from setting up this brand to the hypermarket big box format. So I actually went into the hypercity retail business, which is part of the Shopper Stop group, and then took on roles which were again quite different because India was not known for hypermarket or large format big box type of format. So I actually went in there. So I explored from a core lifestyle departmental premium retail to something that is meant maybe to some extent for the masses of the country. So that's how the journey actually took me. And that's when ISB happened to me. That was a time when I was asking questions to myself, saying the fact that what's the next step? So go further is the word that ISB uses for the PGPMAX program. And that word actually, to some extent, hit me. I'd actually picked up a newspaper and I cut out that small little paper of PGPMAX and put it in my drawer, and I pulled it back and I saw the word. And I said, I need to go further. And while I had been in, say, management committee or execcom sort of roles, I said the fact that if I need to ever set up a business and run the complete CXO role or the CEO role for this business, I have to learn a lot more things. For example, if you were to see core concepts of finance, core concept of leadership, core concepts of new age building blocks for businesses, understanding the elements of strategy. Those are the kind of things that I was seeking. While I'd heard it as part of a larger group, I was not sure whether I could do it on my own. And that's probably the time when ISB PGPMAX actually happened for me. And I would say the 2 years were amazingly engaging, not just from the academic side and the kind of quality of education, but also from the perspective of the cohorts. I mean, Rajiv being one of them, we were 60 of us and we learned a lot from each other. And that's the time where I could feel that probably I've done it as a retailer, but now I could lead it as a CEO. And that's the time when I probably got the more nuts and bolts and maybe more finesse in what I was doing through the PGPMAX program. And that's the first time I took up the role of a CEO. And for the last 10 years now, I'm doing this role. And I would not dwell into too much aspects of the CXO mindset. I think we will go through as we go further. But I think that gave me that necessary push that was there. So the question that Mani asked earlier is that, you've done an MBA before, why are you doing it again? What we do 15 years ago, 20 years ago, almost has no relevance in today's world. I am almost wondering, can we do a PGPMAX every 2 years? Because the world is changing so dramatically. And our competitors for all of us out here are not our age group, 40s and 50s people. Our real competitors are people who are much younger than us. The CEOs who are competing with us are in maybe the 28 and 29 and 30-year-olds. And almost all of them have only one thing in common. They're using technology as a driver to grow businesses. And I think that's the thing that I'm seeking to learn. And that's the thing that I spend a lot more time thinking today. And that's probably the future of most of the organizations as we go forward. I'll leave it there, Ramani, if you want to ask anything further.
Okay, well, I mean, you talked about go further and also every 2 years of experience. That's pretty interesting. We'll come back to that. Now, may I invite Ekta to talk about these areas? So what I understand is that we talk a lot about the, how and when portion, if she can also tries to talk about the why portion a little bit more with her experience, I would really be grateful. Over to you, Ekta.
Thank you, Mani. And Rajiv, couldn't agree with you more on when you say that there are no silver bullets to when you start thinking that, you need a CXO mindset. It is something that is basically coming together of so many things, what makes an enterprise, understanding and appreciating what happens beyond your own silo is not something that, you start thinking one day. I think it all starts, to my mind, when you really have that inquisitiveness within you to figure out that, do you really want to know the larger picture? What is it that the rest of the functions in the organization carry as a mandate, right? What are their risks and challenges? The more you start understanding that, the bigger picture starts to come together, maybe like Lego blocks, right? So to me, for a start level leaders, middle level leaders, I think that inquisitiveness, that curiosity to understand that what it takes to see the organization from the top is first try to put the whole circle around it, make it a more holistic picture. And how do you do that? I mean, that's not easy, given that, we all have a day job in the end. You have to do what we come for, right? So how do we make sure that we leapfrog into doing various different things is something that, we have to get very innovative about. I will say that there can be opportunities, there can be challenges, to answer Mani's question when he says that, how do you do that? There are no silver bullets. They're like, if you would like to be participating in, what we call cross-functional, if you are a volunteer for something that is beyond what you said, Rajiv, is your comfort zone, you get the finer nuances. That's how it worked for me. Coming from a very, siloed technology background, and unless you go around, network, talk to people, learn what is their day in the life looks like, then you start to, put it all together and say, okay, so if there is a problem, it cannot have just a technical solution. It has to have the other elements to it. So that's how I pieced it together. And what helps, right, if you're in a large enterprise, especially, when a challenge is of doing something which is cross-functional, it actually boils down to one, to turn it into an opportunity. I would put it that way. How often do you raise your hand to something which is beyond your comfort zone? Actually takes the, gets the notice, and successes and failures come together. But the experiential learning that goes with it, I think, really starts to mold you into that next level. I'll put it that way, Mani.
Wonderful, Ekta. I mean, the one which you talked about very specifically about inquisitiveness and also, building blocks through Lego. I think that was really, nice to know about it. Now let's bring Rajiv Bajaj into this picture with so many years of experience in consulting, having seen so many companies. Now, CXO, I think who better can talk about what is CXO mindset is all about. Probably I can ask, I extend my question, what's the difference between the various fields and what exactly a CXO plays a bigger role when you compare to what CEO who does not do? And also in terms of, when and how portion of it. So over to you, Rajiv Bajaj, please.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. And thanks Ganesh, for your wonderful questioning, because that's what triggers the clarity and the confusion within us. So as to what do I say now, how do you answer this, where do I begin, etc. And also with my fellow colleague and great friend Rajiv Nair here, fellow colleague Ekta here, it's just great to be here. I'll say a few things. They are a little bit all over. Like a good teacher of mine said, our minds can sometimes be like a bowl of noodle soup, right? It's our noodles, all wrinkled up with each other with lovely vegetables and a delicious broth. But they are going to be a bit entangled. Okay. I will say the following. Number one, I think all of us here are leaders of our own lives, and whether we know it or not, we are at some level of leadership. If you take that famous, the level 5 example that was brought out in a slightly academic book called Good to Great.
Good to Great.
Yeah. I know the essence of it a little bit. I'll be confessional, I have not read it page to page. But he says that you start as an individual, you develop your skills, and therefore you are leading yourself. So you're an individual, and then you become a team player, and you start to sort of work within a team. So you start to become a leader within a team. Team could be just more than one, two, whatever. And then you start to manage a team. So that's your level 3, right? And all of us here are at that level. Certainly. And then you have brought this point of, so from the level 3, you want to take the CXO mindset, right? Sort of the level 4. A CEO is also a CXO in a certain way, right? He's just become more general management rather than a CXO who has to think probably at that level, but slightly more accountable for certain functionalities. And then, of course, what Jim Collins presents in the book, and that's kind of very simple but very revealing, when he says that the companies which, and of course, all companies have leaders, so everybody has level 4 leaders, everybody has managers, there are teams and there are individuals, and that is what makes a great company. It's interestingly, his research, in which is over 1,400 companies, so we can't discount that, right? there's some method to his madness. And then he says that the level 5 qualities, which is the sort of 10 to 20 best companies that he talks about, he says the unique characteristic there, and he says it's humility. Now, wow. I mean, what an insight to gather out of what a research. So now, keeping that as the background, I do feel that all of us are at some stage, and at any stage at the end, I bring it back down to, we are all probably managing ourselves. We are all leading ourselves every day, whether we are aware or not, whether we may be very busy and each minute of our calendar is probably scheduled, or we are completely free and we are on a sabbatical and thinking about what next to do. We are just managing ourselves. Now, to your more specific question was, I think you talked about the leap or the shift, and which Rajiv talked about is go further. Ekta talked about the building blocks, inquisitiveness, and Rajiv also talked about taking that plunge in leadership. So, and from leading one set, and he's been doing actually multiple steps and changing his industry also a little bit on the way. Just putting my experience out there, I can talk best about my own journey or my own experience. So I don't know, I think it starts to happen if, number one, if you are desiring it, which is, so the seed is in you. You want to grow that. You want to go further, as my friend said. So, and I'm sure all of us here in this room today, as participants, we all want to go further. So we don't have to worry about the leap. How do you make the leap?
Did I lose Rajiv?
No. I think he's.
I think two, three aspects. I was just structuring my own mind. 2, 3 aspects. One is if you're doing well, whatever your tasks are. So if you're an individual player or a team player or a manager, if you're doing well there, I think the next step of just tends to open to you. I don't know if this is why it works like that, but this is how it works. So, the doors, people who are doing well, they just, more doors open to them.
Rajiv, we lost you.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay. Yeah.
To make the leap, we have to find opportunities indoors. So we must seek these opportunities. And to do that, we've got a whole host of things we tend to do. But as we grow, I think this whole aspect of, I was going back to my consulting time and my sort of post-consulting time when I came into industry. And just to be confessional out here, while my consulting experiences gave me a lot of intellectual mumbo-jumbo and a lot of great experience about problem solving and challenges, but I think they became my greatest challenges as I was taking larger roles to lead and not just to perform. They were my biggest challenges, and they still continue to be my biggest challenges. And these were simple things. I don't know if people are aware, consulting is like a sport where you've got a lot of talented individuals who are busy playing against each other, actually, because it's supposed to be a wonderful place because there's a lot of talent there, a lot of intellectual activity happening. It's also considered a very highly insecure place because it's sort of a perform or move out sort of culture. So people want to make sure that they demonstrate performance in a consulting world. Now, what that does is at a younger age, it pushes you on to being sharper with analysis, to demonstrate your skills, to be very outward, to be very outspoken, multitask, so on and so forth. What I started realizing as I was reflecting the later roles, actually to be a good CXO, to be a good CEO, to CXO, whatever leader, I needed to actually slow down a bit. I needed to think better than just to present better. And I needed to probably listen more than to speak. And I will also say this, that inflection point also happened when I joined ISB around, I'm just counting, so 10, 11 years back. And the ISB experience also, while it was highly rigorous in terms of they wanted to impart the entire MBA to, Rajiv and I were in Rajiv was younger, but I was in my 40s. But essentially what was happening at the underplay, which was Rajiv was talking, we were eventually learning from each other or learning from just our time there. And I think that was the first time. I come from a slightly harder background, like, too many objectives, plans, numbers. I come from a numbers background, so that's the worst, I think, in any place to come from. But I think the self-awareness and the journey towards humility probably got seeded in ISB. So it's a big intangible, but I would say a highly important one for somebody who was so corrupted like me, who was too full of himself. So I don't know if it really answered your question, Ganesh, in the way you wanted, but we float.
The rain brings whole lot of water. It is for the people to gather it and keep it inside. So you're like a big cloud burst as it is happening in Dehradun. So probably we'll just, channelize it out going forward. Thanks very much, Rajiv, for such a wonderful talk. In fact, you brought me back those lovely memories of Jim Collins, where the hedgehog concept of, bringing all the three put together. The fox knows everything, but the hedgehog knows one thing very thoroughly. And that's what, Jim Collins talks about. I think that is what going forward is going to be a great scene of it. It's great. Now, guys, I think we move on to another aspect now. We'll quickly switch on. So because I could see participants, many of the, people are already doing courses right now. Is planning to just do the course. So I'll just quickly, drill down to taking back to 2011 level. And then henceforth, and for ICTA, of course, it's from 2018 onwards. So what is one thing, just talk about your evolving journey of that, a whole period of 1 year, maybe interesting insight, which actually had triggered you to move something different. It's kind of this is what the Eureka moment I had during the course of, PGPMAX. And also, I also would request you to talk about how the alumni has, as a whole, maybe yours or your own cohorts level, how did it go about? So a little bit of talk about ISB's experience. We initially talked about CXO perspective. I just would request you to dig deep into your experience in ISB as a student, which anyway, I'm also going through that. So it will be a good learning for me as well. But a whole lot of, metamorphosis has been going on. That's what I've been experiencing. Having said that, I think, can we, take your output? So probably we can start off with the ICTA, who is very recent now. So from that perspective, and then move on to both Rajivs. ICTA, can you start sharing your experience about, the Lego blocks, how it got created and put it in place, those areas? Can we?
Okay, let me take it further, Mani. Yeah, so even 2018 is a little dated now if I look back, right? But the memories are fresh. So experience, when you ask me, Mani, I think it will be an experience that I can call out at multiple levels. Okay? At one level, it is great to be back in school, okay, as a cohort, right? With worries back in office, and those days just learning experience. So that's fantastic. The entire pressure of assignments and how do you fare in it, and that you haven't touched for 20 years, that comes back. So that's one level of feeling which is fantastic. The other is, I couldn't say it better than Rajiv Bajaj. It starts to get humiliating. You come in there as heroes in your own, world. You think, why do I need PGPMAX? I know everything. That's what everybody told me as well. Why do you want to go there? You already at a level. Why do you want to do that, right? So it starts to, open up like the peels of an onion. It's every day you realize what you know and what you don't. I'll take some examples. The entire learning experience is very experiential, as you know. It's very case study driven, right? And each case study has multiple facets, and it's not really, there is always an answer in one type of function or department that can address it. So when we would come together as a group, that cross-functional debates and the learning that we would have, so how many ways you can cut the cookie to, and it could get to any level of discussions, and those conversations going till wee hours of morning, and then you still have to finally, from all your divergences, converge to have one solution that will work best. Those were the best, I'll say, takeaways, because all said and done, while the school will teach us a whole lot of frameworks, if this is a problem, ABC, if this is the framework, ABC, when you go back and when the rubber hits the road, you really can't recall them at the time, but what you gained as experience of understanding a problem holistically, quickly getting into what works best and minimizes a negative impact, and therefore is the best probable solution at that time, those kind of experiential learnings is something that I still take with me. So I can give you an example. We had a situation, and something failed in one of the projects, and I wanted to quickly recall what did they teach me in crisis management, what was the ethics professor saying, and it did not come back. It suddenly doesn't, because you don't go back to the books, but you remember the core principles on which the entire subject is taught, and you are able to relate to how quickly you want to address some of the key elements so that you attack the problem. So I'll say problem solving was a great thing that I've carried since then. Making sure it is a very inclusive problem solving and not a very siloed problem solving. So collaboration, I believe, is something that I have really taken as a step forward going forward. I can't just say that this is a problem and this is a technical solution. It may or may not work, right? So those kind of, I'll say, projects that get more people to participate and therefore have a higher chance of being accepted is something I learned with working with the network and the people within the organization. So that was one mindset change I had.
Okay.
That's an amazing, great, Ekta. I think it's straight away came from your bottom of the heart. That's really wonderful. So let's have Rajiv Nair to go. Please.
Yeah. So I'll kind of mix a few things which Ekta said and also Rajiv said. I think from high functional expertise, where each one of us come with a level of understanding what we do very well. One of the things that, while everybody said it was more humiliation for me initially itself, I was overwhelmed at a very early stage to say the fact that I could see the best of all industries, because retail, whatever it's worth, was much smaller businesses than what some of the large right up from the PwCs of the world to companies like Rajiv's company to various other companies which are there. So this virtually we were a organization sitting out there where we could see people of all type, all experiences come together for a common objective, which is learning, right? So again, to be able to work with highly intellectual people and come to an outcome and a solution. It could be as simple as 5 intelligent people sitting together and trying to crack a problem. It's actually more difficult. Where sometimes if one or two out of them know the solution, it's very easy to find the solution. But if all five think divergently and they want to find the solution, sometimes it's not very easy. So I think even managing smaller, medium size or larger group or virtually managing a class itself is like running an organization, right? Because people, probably you got an organization with the best talent available. Do we have the best cultural mindset to be able to find the solution? Are we collaborative enough to get the solution? All of these kind of things come into play. Then, of course, group dynamics and all these kind of things also happen. Of course, all the nice and not so nice things also come to light at certain points in time. Certain things like negotiation, certain things like calling a spade and sometimes calling it that, okay, we are not going in the right direction. Two people of maybe similar intellectual caliber or higher, I think becomes difficult. So when you run an organization, you are probably bringing in the best talent together. ISB is like a place where the best talent is together. It's our job to assimilate and be able to pull out the best that we can do with the help of our own learning, at the same time that of our cohorts. I think that's the thing that you actually do in a classroom over maybe continuously 2 years. And the beauty of it is each course has certain members of the team who have serious functional expertise in that area. So also sometimes letting go, sometimes taking a step back. I was not a core finance guy, and maybe somebody like a Rajiv is my group. You sit back and listen to what the person has to say with an objective to be able to bring an outcome. For example, if anything to do with consumer insight, pricing, consumer is my expertise, that's the time when somebody steps back and we are able to find solutions. So all those Wharton evenings that we spent trying to crack problems, I think Rajiv was in my group. I think why it was just a nice assimilation of, like people coming to this. So if I were to take things away from here, I think the ability to step back a bit, ability to listen, ability to allow teams to do what they want to do and empower them, and not just be that functional expert who says, I know everything and I will solve the problem and the larger problem that happens in the stuff. Second is seeing a holistic perspective of any industry. Simple things like the 5 forces model. If you're talking about the industry from a holistic perspective, can I sit in a helicopter and look at the industry rather than looking at from inside out perspective, outside in perspective to any problem, to be able to do that. And then larger challenges, like I think Ekta rightly put in, there have been hundreds of ethical dilemmas that as a manager that you come into, right? For example, during the COVID scenario itself over the last 2 years, so many problems all of us face. Businesses shut down, complete anarchy, right? In businesses like ours, we can't sit at home and work all the time. We are engaging with consumers, right? So how to run a business, how to work a business when there is no cash flowing into the business for months on end? What do you do? How do you morph your business from being a physical retail business to a technology orientated, omni-channel orientated business? How do you lever from a services business to a product business? All of these kind of things we would have probably not thought of with that kind of clarity if we had not thought that world anyways is full of challenges and full of VUCA possibilities. But we actually learned VUCA in reality in the last 2 years when COVID hit us, right? And all of us changed the way we work. Like today, for example, technology companies like Ekta, they have decided that they don't need to work physically at all, right? So obviously, I don't know how many millions of dollars were saved in not having physical offices all over the world for technology companies. So I think a lot of the learnings, like she said rightly, we can't go chapter by chapter and think about it. But if I were to think back, a lot of those learnings came from there. And all of us are able to implement that together. Once a year, and I just step a little bit more, just for our own getting together and getting to know each other's journeys together. I think once a year, all of us meet, and I'm assuming all cohorts do that. At least 40 of us meet every year for at least 2 days. Get together. I think it's more friendship and more banter. But I'm saying the fact that it's nice to see the journeys of various people in various industries also happening. So it's not like we're disconnected from what we learned out there. We're also connected with a set of at least 60 cohorts. And through these kind of programs, we're also able to interact, learn, and continuously learn through our career journeys through the benefit of ISB. So all of those are my learnings from ISB. Thank you.
That's an amazing, truly, inside out to outside in both reciprocal, talking about how the business models evolve across, from the way how we used to see, how others were seeing, how the cohorts experience comes into picture. I think that's really, really great. I mean, that's what it is. Of course, the networking portion, a little bit up there. I think Rajiv Bajaj will come. He's a finisher of a game. So this particular question, I would ask him to take it across holistically and also, answer the networking portion also a little bit more in detail. Over to you, Rajiv.
Yeah, no, wonderful listening to Ekta and Rajiv here. Yes, Rajiv and I were in the same group at Wharton, and I remember the sessions that he was talking about. Great memories. And I'm sure, Mani, likewise, you are experiencing this as you are, with your extensive leadership experience, but you are sitting in a class with fellow colleagues and experiencing these. So I think, let me touch upon these things that you asked, Mani. One is, okay, so I think I'll touch upon very quickly the course, the school, my fellow colleagues, my alumni, and then the network. So I'll do it just very quickly like that. The course is comprehensive. There is no question on that. And I think what it tends to do is, so for example, like I know Rajiv and me, we came from two slightly different functional backgrounds. I was more numbers, finance, etc. He was more consumer, sales, etc. So the course tends to fill up the gaps. Now, these gaps only just exist in our mind, but they do exist in our mind. So the course fills that up. So when I went into the course, I had no, Rajiv was a prior MBA, but I had not done a formal MBA. So for me, books may be in plenty out there. Information may be, oh my God, by astronomical out there. But the course just teaches the sound basics, and it helps you fill the gaps. Now, so what does that do? One is it just demystifies. Like what Rajiv was saying, I may have, if I would read the article on 5 forces, while it's extremely fantastic, but somehow the memory of that class, the case, all of that sits. And this is the beauty of a good teacher, maybe. I should certainly compliment the teachers. And they could be different for different of us, where we connect with the course and all that. But somehow the learnings start to sit in your subconscious. Like Ekta also mentioned, it's not that you go to the books, right? You never get time to go to the books, but it's something that sits in your subconscious in that. And then it triggers up. So the course does a good job in polishing your neurons. The school provides a wonderful atmosphere. It's a world class, we all know. It's a great brand, and despite of being such a fantastic brand, there is so much humility. There is so much at ease in the ISB family. It's just amazing. I don't know if it exists in other schools. I have no personal experience, but their staff members, the faculty, even the leadership makes you very welcome. Honestly, we all feel we are part of the ISB family. It's an aura that they have created, and a very genuine one, a very authentic, genuine aura. So that's the school, and somewhere my ego feels very happy that I'm part of the ISB family. So, okay, and that's the second. The third is when at the age of 40, can you make 40 new friends, right? So it's impossible. The last time I made friends was in school, a little bit in college, and then at every stage of life, while I may have gotten more exposed to people and to companies, to my own and others, I guess at every stage of life, you start becoming more and more lonely. There isn't anyone you can speak very openly, because everybody's vested, strings are attached, etc. with the exception of your family and your old friends. So at the age of 40, when you're so-called entering into your midlife, I know people are smiling here because they're much younger, and but to find new friends, to slowly discover them, that's a great thing about your own cohort. It just leads to a lot of good friendship, meaningful friendship. It's rare. It's a gift it's the greatest gift. So we are very happy that we have this gift. It exists in our cohorts. Yes, and Rajiv said we come together, so it keeps getting well bonded. And also, I think it's common that sometimes we are hearing in every class 2 or 3 friends are coming together. They are forming a new enterprise, or they're helping each other's businesses. Now, these are very common things in networking, but they're happening. So again, it's a group. You're together for 12 to 18 months or 15 months. So you are constantly interacting. Relationships will get formed. And these are strong. I come to the next level, which is the network. Now, we are very happy that today, I think our ISB network, the PGPMAX network, is close to around 600, 700, alumni. And it's still small. I mean, but because it's small, it's still very warm. We can reach out. The staff helps out. It probably gets a bit more geographical because, for example, I live in Delhi NCR, so I am more close to the Delhi NCR group. And what we do is while the excuse is to have a good evening together, we certainly need that as an excuse to pull us out of our sedentary lifestyles. But the idea is I come to know of my NCR colleagues from different batches. And then ISB brings people together for different events. They have been doing that always. And you tend to network on that. You interview colleagues. It's just different ways of your network, solidifying. And like we probably know that it's not the number of dots, but maybe a fewer dots, but if you can connect them better, that's better. So it's very helpful. I think it's very familial, if I can use the word. It's like a family. Easy once you're part of that family, and yes, the course experience does build your mind muscles, your neurons, your subconscious, etc., etc. So there's no question on that. That should be the least of the worries.
Yeah, of course. I'm on. I'm 22 cohorts, a little slow, unlike 2011. So you have to adjust with me a little bit. Yeah. Okay. So guys, I mean, now probably before we move on to the next, this session, I think I'd like to take a couple of questions from there. I don't know whether should I read it out for you. I think there are, okay, let me just go on, read it out. Anybody who like to take the questions, you can do that. There is a question from, before that, I'd like to call Satan Kumar. I think he has raised his hand. You would like to ask a question, Satan? Are you there? Satan Kumar Dal, you would like to ask a question? You have risen your hand.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, buddy. Yeah. So
Very
class participation, #1 mark for you. Go ahead.
Sir, very good afternoon, all of you. Hello.
Yeah, we can.
Yes, buddy. Go ahead. Please go ahead. Your questions. Yeah.
Sir, my first question is, I completed my master's, but around above 10 years, I am running our own business, actually family business. Can it experience counts?
Oh, okay. I think this is for joining this course you're talking about, Satyan?
Yes.
Okay. Thomas is there.
Satyan, let me join in now.
Yeah.
So Satyan, what I'll do is I'll share a link to book a one-to-one conversation with us I'll be happy to look at your profile and then help you better with your profile and help you assess the program also better. So let me do that. Let me share this link to you, and we'll go ahead with the other questions on the panel.
Sure, sure. So, guys, there are, I could see around close to 8 questions now, which I'm going to ask. Anything which is related to the course, which is, in terms of their operational points, I think Thomas is there to really take you guys through. But I'm going to take questions which are going to be asked to the panelists per se. So while sharing your experience and learning to participant, can one of you share one biggest mistake or blunder you did in the immediate past, the learning you got it from managing that mistake and come over the blunder if it is not strategic and if it is not difficult for you? I think I would request you to share any one of it. This is a rapid fire. Anyone. Because when we join ISB course itself, we have actually shed the actual fear of, asking, accepting, admitting that we don't know. So we are experienced in that. I'm sure this is not a difficult question to any one of you.
No, I can go first, actually.
Please go ahead.
One of the things and critical levers in a retail business is actually the people who run the show, right? And ours is a people business. Any hospitality, any retail business is a people business. When the going is good, everybody is happy, everybody is having fun, the culture is wonderful, and things are great, and the organization does well for the consumer because there is a good culture behind, and everybody is in a good space. And as an organization, I would say, we have been taught since very early days that the culture in an organization is extremely crucial, and the consumer connect for the organization comes when people inside the organization are happy. And I think that's been the principle with which we ran various businesses. But when COVID hit us, we were in a significant dilemma for certain parts of our businesses. For example, we were doing general and modern trade business, which is basically distribution of products to small retailers or mid large retailers who are selling goods with our manpower on a contractual basis. Now, while these members were contractual in nature, but they still belonged to us, and we were the people who hired these people for the organization. So obviously there was a huge need for us to go back and look at our costs very, very, very deep. And we then had to, at certain points in time, really take certain tough call on people, and one entire bunch of people that we had to let go of during this period was the contractual staff that we actually had to let go in these centers, because the shops themselves were not working. These were expensive labor. That happened, including our own business, which is basically what we call as a clinic business. We had to rationalize the number of people that we could afford during the 1.5 years that went by for COVID. So all this actually happened during this particular period, which are necessary steps, but at the same time needs to be highly calibrated and highly thought of, and I would say amazingly well communicated, so that there is some level of surety of continuity for people, because nobody knew how long the COVID pandemic would go. Because what happened initially on whatever, I remember March 20th, when the Prime Minister said that we are going to shut down, everybody thought 1 or 2 months and we are back in business. But actually the business didn't open at all. It just kept going on and on and on. So to cut a long story short, I think what we took as decisions at certain points in time, which seemed extremely prudent at that particular point in time, probably needed to be thought of with the lens of the fact that what happens to culture post these decisions that we take in the organization, and how we take those decisions, I think is extremely crucial. So while as a prudent business, we took those calls, but what happened post that? Okay, when businesses resumed and we wanted the people back and we wanted to set back the business in motion, we realized the fact that the maximum attrition we got in the business was when the business opened, right? Because one is market started throwing larger opportunities, but because during that particular period, some members of the team felt that they felt a little cheated, because they had never seen a side of an organization which looked a little, what do you call it, not so not people orientated. Okay, because all these years we have been good to people, all these years we've been a great place to work, and all of a sudden we've taken decisions which are there. And so what has happened is, for us to reset the business in our type of industry becomes extremely difficult, because when the business opens up and you start having high bouts of attrition, which we never encountered. Experienced resources like doctors leaving us, or trained resources like therapists leaving us, all of these kind of things actually mattered. So when the next round of the pandemic happened, which is basically the last year, we actually took some calibrated changes to our decision on people. We managed to retain a lot of people during that period. And I can say between the first round of pandemic and the second round of pandemic, I think our cultural decision making on people was way better. But I would say the biggest mistake was when the times are tough, people want the organizations to support them. And if you make mistakes at that particular point, it kind of ruins your culture for a long period of time. That's the biggest mistake I would say we did.
I think that's a really holistic, and which anybody can relate to that kind of experience. Wonderful, Rajiv. Thanks very much for that. I'm going to ask one question to Ekta, which was directly addressed to her, and then maybe move on to one more important question to Rajiv. So now the question to Ekta, I hope you were able to read that. However, I'm just going to read this again. Ujjwal is a part of MNC large enterprise, and where he feels like broader understanding of the business is very difficult. What kind of a doubt as to mid-sized company or understand the broader aspect of the business, like what other functions do and what their mandate is. What are your thoughts around it? I think you are the best one to really answer this question of Ujjwal.
Thank you for the question, Ujjwal. Actually, what you've just written in that note is exactly what I did. So let me give you a little bit of background. I worked with a large group, Coforge it is called. It was an IIT earlier, which works as providing IT services to few very focused domain groups, one being aviation. I worked very closely for over 20 years, servicing customers in the airline and airport industry. But I couldn't agree more with you that understanding of the business actually happens when you're out there in the trenches, which typically does not happen when we are providing, services support as a back-to-back business. The reason I joined where I am today, so what I do, and I think this also, kind of converges what Mani had said at some time, I'll talk about what I do. From my role as a CTO at an IIT, I transitioned into a Chief Digital Officer at WAISIL. And WAISIL is nothing but IT support provider for airports in India and globally. So we service the Delhi airport, the Hyderabad airport to start with, and a few more that's coming up, right? So the entire IT infrastructure at the airport is done by us. So today, while it is a smaller company, but the satisfaction to me is immense. So, it is what drives you in the end is the most important part. I wanted to stand there right in the middle of the passengers and experience what they go through when they go through, the systems that we put together. So when I'm now in this industry in a much smaller, group compared to where I was earlier, I like it because that helps me understand the business better, be more closely working with the end users, get their experience. So it all depends on what drives you. If it is something that you look forward to, by all means, I would say that my experiment has not been a failure so far. So I've been 2 years out into this smaller group company, but I get better satisfaction doing what I was doing in the other organization. So to each their own. If it is something that drives you, please go ahead.
That's an amazing, and that's what exactly, everybody's mind would be there, and you nailed the comment right at the, right place. Thank you very much, Ekta. I'm sure the person who asked this question would be happy to really listen. Now, the question I would like to throw this to Rajiv Bajaj now. Each of the panelists, I think this is an anonymous attendee. It's very interesting. So I thought probably you're the best one to do that. Preview of what a typical day of your life looks like? I think that looks to be very interesting or an open one. So probably you can answer that. Then if anything else, I'll come back to other activities also. Please.
Well, okay, so it's been very varied. Simply because when you're doing deals or you're working on, then not every day looks the same. So that's in my case. But having said that, my own personal day is an important routine for me. So for me, what my day looks like is the activities in the day may be slightly different daily, but sort of my day pretty much has now become a routine for me. A little bit early rising, some amount of me time, just a bit of catch up on a little bit of news, not reading too much in detail, just to be honest, and then of course, whatever the tasks of the day are. So now it's when I was in the general management role, a lot of the time during the day used to be just engaging with my different people, right? So whether it's colleagues, whether it's your team members, whether it's stakeholders. So, and honestly, there used to be very limited time for just thinking through some things in detail, because just the engagement activities, whether we call them meeting or just, catching up, etc., pushing, follow through, or answering your other stakeholders. It was just, and therefore the evenings when sort of this sort of activity dies down is when you realize, oh my God, I had to do that, I had to respond to that. So the pressure just continues. So that's how my day looks like. It's not perfect by any standards. Over years, I have realized the importance of sleep. I have sacrificed it in my early years, but it's one of the greatest things you can do for your mind, body, and spirit. So do take care of that.
That's amazing. Of course, it's a learning. Rajiv, you like to, share in terms of strategic, operational, vis-a-vis, futuristic point of view, in those percentage and compartments, if you would like to add on something more to this question.
I think a retail business is a little, like 24/7, not 24/7, but a large part of the day is spent on what's happening real time in terms of, how things go. But our business also a certain level of seasonality in the way we do our business. There are certain parts of the year we spend on strategic business plan development. So which typically, if you were to look at some parts of the year, like somewhere in October through December, we spend at least one day a week on drawing up the plans for the next 2 to 3 years. And obviously we bring in a buy-in with the board somewhere in the month of Jan, and by April we deploy the plans for in our businesses. If you know any retailer, it's a 52-week calendar. It's a 7 days a week business plan that actually we set together. The larger objectives of the business, which is the growth drivers of the business or the strategic pillars or the building blocks of the business, is what we think through at the end of a financial year, and that's what we set in motion. We also set certain RACITs for the business so that we also measure those against the RACITs on a regular basis. So that's how the business calendar works. But a typical retailer's business actually happens by reviewing performance of the business as of the previous week on every Monday morning. So I don't know whether you know this, but across the world, I've been to other parts of the world also, people start work very early on a Monday morning, and they actually review the business of what has happened in the previous week. And everywhere in the world, you'll see what is known as a Monday meeting or a Tuesday meeting, where for about 2 to 3 hours in a day, all the regional managers, sales people bring in customer insights, sales performance, all of these kind of things. So without without anything. I mean, being in sales or being in this thing, I don't know whether you guys have this habit, but we can't sleep without looking at the number of the day at the end of every day. And I think I've done it for more than 25 years. So I think that's how the day ends. But if I had to step back and look at what Rajiv was saying, I think that me time for me is actually, I don't know, I now during the COVID period actually got into this nice habit of going for a long walk early morning. I do a bit of running and I do a lot of walking. And at least 4 to 5 times a week, I do that. And that's the time when my children are rising and going to school, or my elder daughter is now in college, so she's going. So I start my day with that 1 hour of my time. And that's the time when somehow, a lot of complex things that go through my mind in the previous night actually get deciphered, delayered, and probably I'm able to think through a little clearly. I think a lot of decision making for me have come during that time. Even I drive to work, so there is a bit of time that is spent. So I myself drive, so I actually have started changing the behavior from listening to some strange music or strange stuff. I've started getting to this habit of, because I can't read so much at this time, I am actually listening to podcasts a lot more. So somebody just recently gave me a very nice series, which I'm sure lots of you must be listening to, which is known as The Knowledge Project. So a very, very diverse people getting interviewed like this for about more than a couple of hours. So even that 1 hour of drive time is something that I get to learn certain things which are there. But once you come to work, of course, each day of the week has a particular structure. And that's the way we actually go about doing the business. So I think some amount of me time, some amount of, I would say, hopefully working on self and fitness and other things. But yeah, broadly, that's the way the year goes.
Ekta, I want to add this question, or I can add one more question to you so that both can be answered together.
Right. Go ahead.
Okay, good. So, I mean, this is a very interesting question from Rajesh Bhagwat. I think most of the people have this in their mind. He's a pure techie of 22 years, and he wished to become CTO before he retires. I think probably he can become next year itself once he completes PGPMAX. That's what my pitch on PGPMAX is all about. But he's also talked very specifically about the role of playing a techie and a leadership role. But how do we really take leap for becoming CTO? So if we can give him 1 or 2 ideas to become a CTO perspective, my question of CXO is coming right next to all of you.
Okay, thank you, Mani. I think the question of from an individual contributor to how you become a CTO, I'll put it in the same dimension that we tried to address the CXO mindset questions earlier as well. When we talk about a chief technology officer, so what is the day in the life of a chief technology officer? I think that's how you're saying that. I'm relating the two, right? So it is not just about looking at, if I have a given problem at hand, how do I solve it, right? So it is more to do with different aspects of how you see technology in the organization being adopted. It is an outside-in view. It is an inside-out view in terms of where we are, what the gaps are, number one. It is about people. It is about how you take people together, because one person cannot be the flag bearer of technology in an organization. So it is more to do culturally. How do you take the organization towards, if there is any digital transformation or tech adoption that needs to happen, right? So when we talk about the role of a chief technology officer, it is not a siloed technology role, number one, and this came to me directly from our board. When I got nominated for the role of CTO, I had this question, right? There are better techie architects in the organization than me, then why me? So the question, how it was answered, is how I'll play it out to you. And the ability of how you can see a holistic picture as a technology adopter, harbinger, and taking forward is more important than just understanding the technology itself. So what it can do for you, for the benefit, how it can get everybody together to work towards making sure it is adopted and successful, is what it takes to become, the next level. So for you, the answer, Rajesh, would be that as far as the technology goes, you're a great contributor. But if you try and see that how rest of the work that comes around for technology adoption is also something you can start to contribute towards. You start to build that body of work. I'll give you examples. Like I come again, from the industry, which is to do with airlines and airports. So our technical team developed a very interesting solution. Okay, this was for the ground handlers that work at the airports. Okay, so they will have these devices. So when there is a refueling that happens for an aircraft, how they can quickly turn it around. I'm putting it very simplistically. Right? And it was a very nicely done emerging tech solution, which failed completely. And the reason it failed completely was because it was not taking into account the ground handlers don't have a hand spare, number one. They can't really hold a device. No, they have to do things and they can't monitor and keep checking. Secondly, they work in broad daylight. They could read nothing on the device. So when you start to look at the solution more from the problem standpoint and you're able to articulate the need and the effect it will have, it takes you a little level over than just providing a solution, and that starts to build the body of work that I'm talking about. So getting in different dimensions is, I think, very important when we talk about the role of a technology officer. I'm not sure I answered your question, but as a CTO, on a daily basis, what I handle more than anything else is ambiguities. So,
okay. So, we are exactly running against the, clock now, and a whole lot of varieties of questions are coming up. So I'm going to bundle the questions now. So that, everybody gets happy, and also kind of we try to, satisfy as much as possible. There are lovely questions are coming up in terms of, CXO mindset attributes, and also foremost tasks in front of a leader or a startup. I think if you can just think it over a little time and just think about CXO mindset, what are the 3 top attributes which comes into your mind? And also please attach the questions along with your startup perspective. What do you think is the most important, attribute as far as startup perspective is concerned? So if you can just think it over, and then we can always do. Just to give a little bit of time on that, what I'm going to do is I'm also going to slightly summarize what we discussed so that it gives 3 important things. And also when you start talking about why do you think it is right. So when I give a minute of time, I'm just going to just summarize what we discussed so far, so that we can give a little bit of time for their crisper answers to that. So we all talked about the VUCA world. There are a couple of questions also has come, whether this MBA has been useful to panelists or not. He has already answered in terms of he would like to do MBA PGPMAX every year now, which means that knowledge has an expiry date. And of course, wisdom, it doesn't have it, but of course, knowledge has an expiry date. So that's the whole reason. I'm sure that's what Rajiv has already spoken about it. And also it talks about whether you are an MBA or not an MBA, it's going to really good, useful. That's how Rajiv Bajaj also talked about it. And also noodle wriggled with each other in terms of making it the entire, instant noodle or any other noodle, very tasteful. So that's what, this PGPMAX comes across. Beautifully, raised by Ikta, beautifully talked about, you have a guts to raise your hand. That shows, half of your problem getting solved. Probably that is what is another important thing which brought across. And also, if you're an integrator, and if you want to become, a multidiscipline combining together, I think probably CXO role is very important. And that is how, this, and you're also, if you want to become a problem solver to the organization, I think this is what an ISB can actually come across. So I've given enough breathing space to have a cup of, thought process to all of you guys. So I'm going to ask Rajiv Nair to start with 3 important attributes. And if you can add on that startup one, or otherwise combine together is also. And why do you think that way? Over to you, Rajiv. Rajiv Nair.
Yeah. Sorry, I kind of went on mute. I think one of the largest thing, and probably the difference between as say, level 3 to level 5 and the in-between level 4. I think what's important from a CXO perspective is one important thing is it's not just about ideas, but a strategic vision. Right. I think that's the most complicated part, right? So you have so many ideas in today's world, and especially the startup world, there are some amazing ideas coming through. How to curate that idea into a workable business solution with deep insights on consumer market dynamics, I think is important. And at the same time, building a strong business model and a sort of business model with strong unit economics to be able to make it profitable. I think that's the broad picture. But I think most important thing is how do you articulate that strategic vision to not just your stakeholders, but also to the people who are supposed to execute this thing. I think that's the most complicated part of the CXO journey, because knowing something, being a functional expert, doing the job day in and day out successfully is only one part. But creating a growth mindset, a profitable growth mindset, and showcasing it to a larger team and articulating it in a way that every member of the team understands it, buys into it, and achieves the objective, I think is very crucial, which is there. I think the other thing that has happened in today's world is a lot of things are coming through in the form of a technology-led mindset and a digital-led mindset. I think people like Ekta have been living this world, but people like us who have come from the physical world, for us, I think the biggest change in mindset that we have had to bring in is how do we make our business digitally enabled, a business which is accessible to customers 24/7. When we see people delivering goods every 10 minutes from the nearest grocer to a household, some of us are shocked because we didn't even anticipate this 4 years ago. So I think the big mindset is how to learn in terms of technology. And if you don't know it, how to collaborate with people who can do it. So in fact, some of our crazy collaborations during our COVID days was with people like CureFit. Okay, we actually tied up with CureFit and said the fact that, okay, will gym goers of a CureFit be target audience to a beauty business like ours? And we actually were very successful. But a lot of technology learning and how to get across to the customer, how to be digitally active with customers, something that we learned from them. So I think if you don't know it, collaborate and work with people who know it and make it happen. But make sure that it's technology enabled, digitally enabled. I think that's the second thing that I do. Engage with your stakeholders constantly. I think that's the other thing that you need to do, because I think calibrating mindsets, managing expectations, and making sure that you're constantly communicating. I think that's very important, because especially when complex situations happen, I think it's important that the stakeholders are with you. They are willing to fund you. They are willing to promote you. They are willing to tide away through a difficult situation along with you. I think that's extremely crucial. These are maybe 3 different areas that I'd like to talk about. Maybe there are many more, but I'm just saying I'll leave it.
Sure. Wonderful, Rajiv. So quick rapid fire, Ekta Ghosh, 3 points, 3 crisp explanations.
Yeah.
I'll start with where Rajiv actually left. So, we are working in the times when the organizations are born in the digital era. So they don't have to think of a digital adoption, right? But at the same time, the enterprises that exist, okay, they're struggling because they really don't know what the digital transformation journey should be. So I think as part of a CXO mindset, understanding and, building a core competency within the organization in terms of what technology can do to us. Because if we don't, disruption is everywhere, right? So today there is not a single function which remains untouched because of what technology can do. So technology cannot anymore be a side strategy. So I think just, taking on from Rajiv said, that it has to be central to the competitive strategy, number one. The other 2 things that I would say is beyond what Rajiv said, which were absolutely right in terms of not just having a vision and taking it forward. I think that as individuals, as people, CXOs, we really need to also build some mindfulness, right? When I say mindfulness, I'm talking about the emotional quotient that needs to exist at leaders of tomorrow. Because today we are at a very, very, I'll say, sensitive stage when digital is, at a stage which is questionable. Is it ethical? Is it not ethical? What is that we can design ethically itself? Is it all right to do it? Does it really start to, become very invasive? So those kind of ethical decisions are part of every CXO's, I think, role, and taking forward, one must build that emotional quotient, and which is not just at a level of ethics, but also understanding what we need to do as leaders. So mindfulness, EQ, is I put first. The second is, I'll say, how do we stay relevant? That I think is really, really important. Reason being that it's no point trying to do everything, trying to say that I do a catch up all the time. You can never match the pace at which things are turning today. So make your choices. That's what I would say. And make sure what choices we make, we deep dive into them enough so that we have an expertise that stays relevant with us. In our terms in technology, we say T-shaped people. When I say T-shaped people, it really means is you have a large breadth, as a CXO, you understand what various functions do, but build that leg which goes deep dive and keeps you right on the ground to say that this is my core competency. So I would say mindfulness and staying relevant to me are the key takeaways.
Great. That's wonderful. That T-shaped is the one. I really love this. Well, Rajiv, over to you. A kind of, end remark, 3 crispy points and explanation of that, and then we'll wrap it up. Thank you. Go ahead.
No, lovely. And I also love the, the small little image of the T stay with that deep leg. Thank you, Ekta, for that. Okay. I think a few things from my side is, and again, these are sort of reflections over the last couple of years, both in in corporates as well as sometimes with startups, etc. And then of course in my own personal growth and in different transitions. So I think when it comes to the business role, whether you are a CXO, you are a startup, etc. I think we should just know our business very well, and especially if we are transitioning into a CXO role or a CEO role. I think because we are always coming from either a function or a certain project, or maybe entering lateral, etc. And when I say we need to know our business very well, as Rajiv said, the bird's eye view, certainly. But I think each business is simple at the base of it. But that clarity we need to get in our mind. Nobody's going to really come and teach it to us. We need to, especially if you're coming from a function to a CXO, because if we know that very well, we'll start to understand the pressures we and our colleagues are facing on a day-to-day basis better. Understand our business very well and understand how it makes money. What are the risks and issues of that business? Just that basic understanding. I think at the next level, I feel there's just a lot of pressure we are all going through. It's coming from the outside world, and it's about a lot of things that are being talked about every day. It just goes into our minds, and we sometimes start to feel we need to do something about it. I think we need to protect ourselves from now. We cannot isolate ourselves. We need to be aware of what's happening. We need to let it flow in, but be very judgmental about what's noise and what's an important information or a signal for us. A noise is just like the stuff that we need to make sure we declutter. We don't let the noise sit in our heads, because the true essence in a business's success, I'm not saying an individual success, but the true essence in a business's success lies essentially in the activities it decides to do, but it does them really well. Whether it's Rajiv's Kaya, it's Ekta's WAISIL, it's your prestigious Ashok Leyland Corporation. It's the few things that we do very well. And, if we can make sure that we continue to do them very, very well, great product, great customer service, focused, whatever you're again. So I think what tends to happen is we get sucked into a lot of the externalities and takes away our energy, we take away our team's energy. Rather than that, if we can channelize all that energy into what we need to do really well, and maybe conserve some energy, and maybe I come to the third element, which is take self-care and care of our team and our colleagues. Maybe that's what my take is.
Mani, also one thing I'd like to add,
Yes, Raj.
with respect to the entrepreneurship of the new world, I think, what's crucial is the fact that there are certain fundamentals that all of us learned in probably the traditional business, where accountability is a very large part of what we have been taught. I think even if we are CXOs and not owners of business, we are accountable for the money that we take from our investors. There is a purpose for which we run a business. I think as early days, as the CXO mindset and maybe even a startup culture, I think if we can build that level of accountability for the money that we spend, I think it's going to be extremely crucial, because I feel somewhere that equilibrium will come very soon. And already we can see some of the big wigs tumbling. So if we can think differently and say some of the old mindsets can be used to run new businesses, but with the agility of the new businesses, I think we will be in a very different world in the next 5 years.
Wonderful. I mean, that's a wonderful point, Rajiv. It was, in fact, out of, there are so many learnings, and that learning has really been, absolutely dead on the talk. I mean, at the end of the day, we should understand the purpose of the business, what for we are doing it. And sometimes we tend to go away, and that's where, what Rajiv Bajaj was talking about, what is noise, what is relevant. I think those things get merged together. And the way, Ikta talked about mindfulness, and that is what I'm able to combine in all the three things together in the last few minutes. Okay, it's 18:31. We are 1 minute just past. But having said that, as Robin Sharma keeps saying that everything start at, in a confused state of mind. It's very hard, but ultimately it becomes messy in the middle and most pleasant at the end. I think that is what, each one of you have shared about your experience at the end of it. So the people who have attended, I think a whole lot of, variety of questions have come. I really appreciate the participants' questions. There are still a lot of things are coming up. Thomas would in turn, I request you to send it across to relevant, persons so that they can also answer these questions separately. So on that note, thank you so much for having given such a wonderful 90 plus minutes time for all of us. And I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I really enjoy listening to all of you. Thanks.
I think wonderfully conducted, and we really enjoyed the flow with which you created the questions. Thank you so much.
So great. Thank you very much, buddy. Hi, Thomas. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you to the participants.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.